Welcome, everyone, to today's LinkedIn Live. I'm Bruce Eckfeldt. I'm your host, moderator today. I'm going to introduce our topic. I'm going to introduce our guests, and then we're going to get into it. Our topic today, interesting one, is called From Triggered to Generative, Staying Clear and Connected Under Pressure. This is something that I run into a lot with the teams that I coach, leaders I coach. I've got two great guests who also deal with this. I'm excited to kind of dig into understanding what really kind of drives stress, what drives conflict, how do we manage that. I think it's easy to be thoughtful and intelligent and generative when things are not stressful. All that tends to shut down when we've got these stressors. So that is our topic today. I'm excited to dig into it. Let me give a little bit of instructions to folks listening here, and then I'll do our guest. If you're watching on LinkedIn and you have a question, go ahead and put it into the comments or into the page there on LinkedIn. I'll watch that as we go. And if we have questions and comments, we'll try to work them into the conversation. If you are on YouTube, I'm not going to watch those, so jump over to LinkedIn if you want to ask questions. And if you're watching the replay, so on either channel or any channel that we have this posted on, go ahead and put comments and questions onto the page there. We'll watch those in the coming days and weeks, and we'll reply to folks there. So even if you're watching the replay, go ahead and engage, and we'll get to those. So our guests, first up, I've got Dr. Carly Corrado. She is a leadership strategist. She's also founder of Enliven Leadership. She helps organizations align around clarity and coherence through generative communication and flow-based leadership practices. With that, Carly, welcome to the program.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I love your content, and this is such an interesting topic.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much to say, and I'm excited to have some fun with you.
It's great to have you here. Next up, I've got Thomas Rosenberg. He is a somatic coach and founder of Regenerate Coaching, who specializes in helping leaders shift habitual patterns and show up with more awareness and presence while they're under pressure. So a great expert for today's topic. Thomas, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me, Bruce. I'm excited to just dive in with both of you. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. So let's get into it. I think I'd love to start with just kind of each of your kind of definitions or how you kind of think about stress, because I think it's a term we throw around a lot in all sorts of contexts, particularly in leadership and coaching, is, stress. How do we deal with stress? How do we manage stress? But I'd love to get kind of your take on how do you kind of think about or define stress? Carly, why don't we start with you on this one?
Yeah. Well, speaking about stress, it's very much a physiological response when there's pressure, when, there's all these things that can cause it. And it's helpful when I think about triggers specifically, that it is not something that's in your mind, like it's stored in your body. When a trigger gets hit, the response is quicker than your thinking mind. And when your amygdala gets involved and essentially your prefrontal cortex, your thinking mind is hijacked. And so just having a lot of awareness about that, and to know that whenever we're in that state of trigger or just of stress in general, to shift from any content that you think is the source of your stress or is the source, but to first address your state. And that is the foundation of everything I teach in Enliven, is we want to reconnect to our life force. We want to use breathing practices, use presence practices, hum. Like there's so many things that we can do, and we can also help each other to do that. And so just recognizing that this is physiological, and when we address that first, then we can calm down, and now we can get to the content.
Yeah. Thomas, what's your take, or how do you kind of think about stress?
So I really appreciate what you just shared, Carly. For me too, I also point to the fact that we need a little bit of stress. We need a little bit of challenge in order to grow. And so that's like the first layer of stress, just to be able to say, oh, so if I have this constraint, if I have a challenge, then I'm going to learn. And that's what, you need stress to build a muscle.
Yeah.
So there's good stress, and then there's detrimental stress, which Carly really explained beautifully. And for me, what I see in that is also, in addition to what Carly was sharing, there are these narratives that we grow up with. and we respond. So as our amygdala gets hijacked, as she was saying, there's also a story that comes up from when we were very little that says, I'm not worthy, or I'm stupid, or I'm unlovable, or I'm not enough, right? And so that creates a pattern in the body that is generalized. So it might be a tightening in the belly, or a constriction in the throat, or a very shallow breath, or curling of toes. There's so many different aspects to it, but it's just like, oh, like I have to make myself really small. And, maybe it'll blow over. And right when we learned how to do this first, it was a very wise adaptation because we were protecting a young nervous system from big energy. But that's really what happens. And as adults, those stories, those patterns are still showing up.
Yeah. I liked your comment on, some stress is necessary or is functional or is productive or is helpful. And the whole, I come out of sports, and, the art of conditioning is stressing your body in very particular ways and then causing this recovery or prompting this kind of recovery process that overcompensates, makes you stronger or makes you more endurance or increases your mitochondrial performance, things like that. So exactly. The stress in and of itself isn't necessarily bad. It's how much in what context, but also how you react to it. And Carly, I think you hit on something really important for me, which is how do you react to the stress is a lot of determining what impact it has on you. And a lot of it I find is mindset. Like I always love the phenomena or the condition that the difference, that the physiological state of anxiety and excitement is almost identical, right? In terms of what's happening in your body. It's how you're interpreting what's happening in your body that changes which way you feel about it. So if those triggers are worrisome, it's going to come across as anxiety. If this is something, hey, this is exciting, I'm going to learn from it, it's a new opportunity, right? It can be energizing. It can create excitement around this. And so a lot of this for me is this interplay between the physiological events and then how you're interpreting that from a mindset point of view. How I'm curious, Carly, you mentioned kind of getting aware of these things and the hijacking, when the amygdala hijacks, your executive function shuts down. Like what are some tools that you've used with leaders to help them actually just become aware of this? Because I find a lot of times people are not aware they're stressed, right? They're in doing mode and they haven't been able to kind of take a step back and say, oh, what's actually happening in my body right now? Like what are some ways that you help folks actually just grapple with that awareness side of things?
Yeah, I think part of it is this being part of the conversation, how our nervous systems are in connection to wellness and the state of the team, and destigmatizing it, because it's not something that we need to feel shameful of. It's human and we all have triggers and it's okay. And so just starting to draw attention to inviting teams to be curious, like what happens when you're triggered? Can you think of an example? I mean, what's interesting is a lot of people can have these responses and never actually take the time to say, like, what happened? What was the state of my body? And maybe not even reflect that a trigger even happened. And so first, just building in that awareness that something is happening and this is what it looks like in my body. And that if we can shift to just notice it and empower everyone on the team when we're talking about culture, that anyone can ask for a pause and a reset. And having these micro practices that we can do that, okay, we can just say, I think the team can use a reset now, or even in a meeting where it could be if you're triggered and you notice it, or you're starting to have, for example, your cheeks are getting really warm and your heart is racing, and you start to notice these physiological responses in your body, then you can say, hey, can we just take a few breaths here? Like, can we hit pause? And there's a lot that can diffuse in that moment. Or the other person, like, everyone who's part of the conversation can say, oh, can we just pause for a moment? And for example, do like a 4-6 breath, the downshift. Every time our exhale is longer than our inhale, that signals downregulation. That means safety. It's all about the exhale. Like if you have the time and the space for a big, long exhale, your body will start to relax. And so everyone on the team knowing that and say, hey, can we just take a 4-6 downshift for 2 minutes? And there starts to be a culture of we're all humans and we all function better when we have moments to breathe.
Yeah. Yeah. Thomas, I know this is kind of core to your work as a somatic coach, and you mentioned a whole bunch of things that I was great, like curling the toes, everything. Like it's clear, like you've got a lot of things that you look for. But how do you help someone actually identify the tells that they're starting to feel stress or they're starting to have the impacts of stress?
So there's a variety of different ways, but it's building your self-awareness over time. And Carly was pointing to a lot of this work points to vagal theory and polyvagal theory, and just recognizing what vagal state you're in. So the vagus nerve is like a 4-lane highway going from your body to your head, but it's only a 2-lane road going back. And so down regulating, as Carly has so beautifully stated, is just like breathing and just touching into that, but just recognizing as someone is working, because when I'm working with a client, I'm talking about how that person is responding in the situation. So maybe they had a difficult conversation. So I invite them back to that felt sense. And what are you noticing in your body? What is the cost of doing that? Right. So it might be, I'm noticing like this emptiness in my belly, or my heart rate is getting accelerated, or whatever it happens to be. And some people are like, oh, I clench. Because for them, there were words that they weren't allowed to say. Because of social norms, gender norms, what have you. And so it's just like, so they might find the tightness in the throat. They might notice it in the jaw, or they might be like really pinching their lips really tightly because they're afraid that those dangerous words, might come out, and then acceptance, approval, belonging, dignity,
consequences.
And so it's sort of saying, so what are these telltales in my body?
I find it's funny. My tells are my vision. Like I get kind of tunnel vision, and I yawn. So I know when I'm getting in a stress out situation, like I start, doing this yawning sensation, and I know that my vision just starts to shut down. And I use this term kind of, I know I have to take myself off the field. And so I talk with leaders about this, like know when you have to take yourself off the field, right? Because you're no longer operating with the executive function and the capacity to be able to make the decisions you need to make. You got to bench yourself, right? Until you're back into a regulated state and back to a point where you can actually, bring all the executive function that you need to be able to deal with the situation. Carly, you mentioned the team. Like one thing I wanted to kind of get into in this conversation is, as an individual, like how do I become aware and self-monitor, self-regulate, like have some skills and capabilities to know where am I in this and what action should I take and not take. But I think that the interesting challenges with teams, most of what I deal with is leadership teams, and figuring out where is a team on this. And I'm just kind of curious, in your work with folks, have you seen any kind of good approaches or strategies to be able to assess, a team? Where is the team? And obviously people can be at different levels, but how do you diagnose that? And how do you kind of help people understand the impact of the team's situation and the team's ability to actually make decisions or to kind of process certain information? And do you use the lowest common denominator? It's like who's ever the least regulated defines like what the team is capable of. Or I'm just kind of curious where you've seen this kind of team stress and team dynamics come up. I don't know, Carly, if you have any insights on that one.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and I think that there's a lot to assess in a team, and I always do psychological safety assessments and ask a lot of questions to get a baseline, and that really helps to talk about this and to know, how safe people feel speaking up, how safe they feel to disagree or to ask a question. And so that gives a lot of baseline to have the conversation about, okay, so, what actually happens on the team when these things come up, and you can start to hear different stories. Like I love to do interviews on the team and try to understand the different personalities so that then we can have this conversation with real application and context about, okay, there's one person on the team, and it can be really hard when it's the top leader who, has these triggers that make it hard for people to speak about anything. And so we start to, again, the whole de-stigma, making it normal and inviting the team to have language to invite in, okay, a trigger can mean that there's information that needs to come up. Like we all take time to breathe. If someone gets triggered, usually that means that there's a value or there's something that's important to them. And maybe it comes through in this kind of sideways way that can throw things off. But if we have space and there's a certain amount of everyone wanting to support each other to know, have all the information, because that is one of the supportive aspects of triggers, is that they give us information. I was recently working with a team member who was the one who kind of caught all for the team. And so she was really just stressed and kind of mad at everyone on her team. And as we started to do one-on-one work, and she said, I just always have to catch all the balls. And I said, what if you let them drop? Like your team is gonna, the other people are gonna get more effective the moment that you start holding stronger boundaries. Yeah. And it did start to repair certain things, and other people did have to step up more. And so part of the coaching with her was about noticing her body. When is she going into this overperformance mode? And a thing that Thomas said that I really want to emphasize here, as we help people understand the importance of the body and that it's more important than the mind when we talk about triggers, Thomas mentioned that twice the amount of information goes from the body to the mind than the opposite. And, we so often think, oh, our brain is like, it's the control station, but actually twice the amount of information goes this way, which means that our body hugely impacts what we think. So when we're having those beliefs, like Thomas mentioned earlier, like, like fear of failure or, worthiness or whatever these things are, that it's not necessarily helpful to go straight into the mind to address it. That when we address our physiology and we take the breaths, and I personally love doing what I call a one dance in the middle of my day, especially if I have a really important meeting or just any meeting and I'm feeling tired or drained, I'll put on some really fun, upbeat music and just get really silly and like make sounds. And then now I'm resourced and I'm ready to be more playful and not just, too intense in my mind. Like when we free up our body, when we feel good in our body, then our mind's thoughts naturally increase. And it's helpful to just be teaching that to the team so that everyone is empowered with that information.
Yeah, that whole mind-body connection, the whole the flow state, mind-body connection, like it's like if you can figure it out, it's super, super powerful. But it's hard sometimes to find that. Thomas, what's been give me your sense of kind of on the team side, like when you're working with a group or kind of trying to figure out how to, understand stress from an interpersonal point of view? Like, what do you go to?
Sure. So before that, I just want to point back to what Carly, you were talking about with this one dance. That's a resilience practice, in my opinion, from a somatic perspective. And so it's really important. We talk so often about using resilience, but we don't often talk about cultivating it.
Yeah.
And so that's just a really beautiful example of one way that we can cultivate that resilience, so that when we're under stress, we have something our nervous system can go back to and say, oh, this is what it feels like to be downregulated. This is what it feels like to be resourced. So for me, one of the key pieces of my work is creating a declaration statement. And I use that both with individuals as well as with the teams that I work with. And that's really focused on the deepest longings of the development that wants to unfold, either for the individual or for the team. And so when I'm working with a team, I am working with their individual self-awareness so that they start to recognize, oh, this is my story, and this is how it's either hindering or enhancing the development of the team to embody that declaration, because you're taking a stand for what you believe in as a team. But then you also start to recognize, oh, when this person shows up this way, this is how I feel triggered, or this is how I show up, because all of a sudden I'm like, oh, well, they're coming on with this really strong energy, so I have to show up with this resistance because my tendency is, for example, to push against, right? Or I'm an appeaser, so I'm going to turn towards, I'm going to fawn, right? Or I'm going to flee because it just is like I'm overwhelmed. And so it's just starting to recognize, oh, this is what happens. And then so we can explore how that dynamic shows up in a variety of different ways, whether that's one-on-one, whether that's in a group and situation.
Yeah. I'm curious what you each think around, what is the role of a leader? And we could kind of talk about it abstractly, or kind of, could be different situations, but, obviously in a business, like a CEO and leadership team, or a team lead with their team, like, what is the role of a leader to both self-manage, self-regulate, and as well as regulate the team? And what are some tools or things that a leader can be thinking of in terms of being aware of, and then, guiding or kind of helping direct kind of stress and stress response in a team? Like, Carly, I don't know what your thoughts are on kind of leadership's responsibility or opportunity here.
Yeah. I might point to two things. One being the leader goes first. And so the leader, if they themselves have a moment of a trigger or something, to actually share about it vulnerably, and to make it a safe space to talk about this. And it doesn't have to be a big, long, super heavy thing. It's just to say, oh, I just, the other day this thing was coming up and I got a little snappy, and I just want to acknowledge, the thing that I care about here is this. And, I'm a stand for us all staying level-headed together, or whatever it is. So just being able to speak about it without it being a big deal. And then the other piece is inviting in these moments of breath, these moments of everyone stand up and shake, a hum together. Everyone let's take 3 breaths, and on the exhale, we're all just gonna hum or buzz like bees, like these little things. So a top leader can do that and empower everyone, to also use those techniques if they would like to.
Yeah. Thomas, what's your thought on leadership and this responsibility?
For me, leadership is a way of walking through the world. So it doesn't really matter. Title and responsibility is less important for me. It's more how you walk through the world. And when you're talking about a C-suite in an organization, or I feel like it's most important that that person is actually inviting others by their way of being on the same journey, because otherwise you get this incongruence between, you get do as I say, not as I do. And I want do as I do. I'm inviting you along on this journey with me, and not to say it's going to be perfect. Own those elements, but that's really how you step up, because once you're able to start inviting people, and that's certainly what I've seen with clients, is once they start inviting people on that journey, then that gives them the other people permission to interact with their colleagues, whatever level throughout the firm. And then when it goes down to the bottom and then it percolates back up, and then you weave this really lovely open, but it's a really strong fabric. That culture, that organizational culture, becomes a really strong fabric.
Yeah. It's funny. I do find that a lot of the times, I wouldn't say all the time, but a lot of the times I'm coming into teams and I find everyone's just kind of playing too nice, right? Like they're really not engaged in the right conversations. They're really not speaking their mind. And some of it is because psychological safety, right? Like they don't have the right container to be actually, be engaged in critical debate. But I do find that like a lot of times I'm actually introducing more conflict in the team. So I'm trying to get them to actually to debate and put their issues, put their perspectives, actually get into it a little bit, because that for me, that's the only way we really can get to commitment, right? Like if people are really being heard, I really feel like my opinion has been processed. Doesn't mean people are necessarily going to agree with me, but the people have heard me, and I feel like my point of view is being considered at some level of the team. And if I'm not getting it out there, I can't get to real commitment, which is going to drive accountability. What are you? Have you found anything in terms of leadership that actually uses stress strategically, or uses stress as a way to actually get engagement or get critical debate actually going inside teams? I'm curious if you've seen any examples of this, or where you see this coming up. Carly, I don't know what your thoughts are on this one.
Yeah, no, I love what you're sharing here, because it's so important that teams can talk about the hard stuff and work it through, not just be tiptoeing, but then not actually showing up for a decision because they don't agree with it. So it's so important to coherence. And I teach one tool that's called Say the Thing.
Ooh,
And
tell me more about this. Yeah.
And it's all about like, what is the thing that hasn't been said? And it can be just an interesting practice. One team I was working with recently going through a big leadership transition that was emotional and dramatic.
Mm-hmm.
And all of these things. And so just doing a circle, bringing everyone outside. And again, I started, and I like in that situation, this example I'm using, I shared something that was awkward about my own role in the leadership transition, so that what I would share was real. So it's like slightly edgy, but it evokes a real response. And I remember how like this team's first moment of playing Say the Thing, and it's helpful to think of it a bit like a game.
Yeah.
And people saying like one person saying, you know what, I just have been really compassionate about this situation. And I just realized like I'm angry because I'm not being considered in this. And it almost felt like an electric bolt through the team that she said it.
Yeah.
And I just would invite no one to respond, but just kind of give the wiggle fingers and like send good vibes, make it so that the person is just heard and supported. And you get a round of that, and it just feels like, everyone takes a big breath.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thomas, what's your experience on this?
So I use something that we call in somatics blending, because you were pointing beautifully. I was nodding vigorously because I heard conflict can be generative.
Yeah.
And it's being able to go in, and sometimes that's really what's required, is you enter into that energy, but then you move into a third mutually beneficial direction.
Yeah.
And so it's really being able to blend with that energy and say, oh, like neither of us need to get hurt here. Not to say we might have to say the thing, right? We might have to have that difficult conversation, but we can find a way to move forward that can be productive and can also open up field for understanding and compassion.
Yeah. I think it's an important one. I think one of the things I've learned about stress, I mean, most physiological stress response is evolutionarily trying to keep us alive, right? Like it's trying to, like, the scary tiger in the grass and things like that. The problem is that we're triggered by all these psychological things, right? Things that are not actually life threatening, right? It's like, okay, like I lose my job. All right. It's not the end of the world, right? Like I'm not going to die, but we react to it as if we're going to die. And so having this whole kind of understanding of that and being able to kind of sort through the physiological response versus what's the actual situation and how do I kind of process this intellectually. So like all of these, we hit time so quickly. So we're in 30 minutes. I want to make sure people get more information. Carly, if people want to find out more about you, the work that you're doing, what's the best way to get that?
Yes, you can learn more at my website, enlivenleadership.com. And that's Enliven is spelled ENLIVEN. And also you can email me at carly@enlivenleadership.com. And I've just so enjoyed this conversation. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. And Thomas, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Sure. My website is a great place to find me, regenerate.coach. And my email is thomas@regenerate.coach.
Perfect. If people want to get a hold of me, just bruce@eckfeldt.com, my email, eckfeldt.com URL. And obviously we're all on LinkedIn here, so feel free to reach out to us there. Again, if anyone's watching the replay here, go ahead and leave comments and questions on the LinkedIn page. We'll follow those, and on YouTube as well. We'll check those in the coming days and weeks. So if you have comments and questions, and I encourage everyone to reach out to folks if they have questions individually. So again, Carly, Thomas, thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thank you. It's been a blast.
Yeah, thanks so much, both of you.
All right. Thanks to our audience, and we'll see you on the next LinkedIn Live. Take care.